Thank you very much for that. I couldn't be sure what was going to be shared during the introduction, so I wanted to be very honest up front with everyone in the audience. We're going to do something a little different during this session. We're actually not going to talk about, for the next 30 minutes, any technology. Instead, what I want to talk about is how an organization in an enterprise business goes about creating and delivering business value and make sure that they're continuously operating efficiently. At the end of the day, that's the purpose and goal of any organization in an enterprise business. As an IT organization, we just happen to deliver business value and also impact customer experience through the use of technology. My name is Justin Mann. I've had the opportunity for the past 5 years to lead consulting groups who embed closely with customer CIO leadership teams, where we lead the execution of IT transformations. So I want to be clear on that we don't just do a 6 to 8 week strategy development that we hand off to you. Our teams embed with your teams. We partner together, and we're there in the trenches with the teams, doing whatever it takes to achieve those outcomes for IT transformation. I want to stress that all of our initial work was based directly on the ideas and solutions pioneered by Cisco's very own IT organization. Over the years, the story of Cisco IT's transformation got incredibly popular. There was so much relevance. We were fielding requests constantly to share more about the transformation that Cisco IT went from. And one of the recurring requests that we had was, is there a consulting group that can help us figure out how to take what Cisco IT has proven in practice, but help adopt that to our specific organization, to our industry? So over the past few years, we've built a practice that has figured out how to adopt those principles to different industries, banking, insurance, energy sector, and we've figured out how to adopt that to different size organizations. So after years of that work, we've taken a step to boil that down into a couple of different frameworks. A lot of the work that we focus on initially is on services transformations. So helping an IT organization adopt an end-to-end services model and transition to an IT as a service organization. We captured that framework in a book, and thanks to a hardworking number of teams here, this book is now available for the Chinese public. And as a matter of fact, every one of you will receive a free copy of this that we took the time to sign for all of you. So if you don't come across a copy and you want one, be sure just to let us know. We will make sure that you get a copy of this. So the release of the book has allowed me over the past year has given me the opportunity to attend a number of conferences, participate and present at a number of conferences. And over the year, I've started to see certain trends emerge, certain topics that are always the most popular. And you're going to see these topics at any conference alongside a number of very specific technology solutions. Depending on the conference, it'll vary. So all of these, I do strongly believe, are very much priorities for the financial industry. But what I want to highlight about these, they're all enablers. They're all tools. Now, I don't want to question the value of agile methodologies or the value of adopting DevOps practices. There is certainly value in those things. What I want to ask is, does your IT organization have a framework to understand how much value there is? Do you have a framework to understand how you impact that customer experience? So A lot of our engagements start by sitting down with a CIO, a CTO, and we want to be clear on the vision. What do you want to achieve through your IT transformation? Now, there are a lot of trendy topics out there, DevOps, multi-cloud. There's so many different shiny buzzwords, and it's very difficult, I think, for an IT leader these days to remain focused on what their vision is, what their priorities are. So I always try to set the stage by asking IT leaders, and I'll ask you in the audience to take time and just think about these 3 key questions as the foundation for the vision for your IT operating model in the future. So, question number 1. How do you plan to establish the IT organization as the trusted enabler for business digitization? So that's a really important concept because a lot of IT leaders I spoke to in the past few years, they're really concerned about how do I reestablish command and control? How do I ferret out shadow IT? The reality is you don't. We just wrapped in an engagement with a CIO for a Shell oil company. Now, what they were able to do is their teams are now tossing up drones to do site surveys in hours that take their competitors 6 weeks or longer just to schedule. They're using VR goggles to execute pump and valve repair. And the point I want to make for that is it was not the central IT organization who led that innovation. Instead, your goal for central IT should be to establish yourself as that trusted platform for innovation and digitization. So technologists and technology are going to be pervasive across all of the lines of business. There's no such thing as a business strategy these days that don't involve a technology element. So you want to let the technologists out in the lines of business innovate, and you want to be that trusted platform, whether they want to engage with you to build the solution from bottom to top, or if they want to build a lot of that solution themselves and only leverage IT as the platform for hosting and storage initially. In other words, IT and business operating models need to shift to where they're blended together in the future. All right. Question number 2. How do you plan to operate your IT organization like a competitive business? I would argue if you wanted to start a business, the very first thing you need to think about is, what is my value proposition? What am I delivering of value today? What am I going to deliver that's valuable tomorrow? Now, the good news is IT organizations today deliver an incredible amount of value to the enterprise business. We just do a very poor job of communicating that value, and we need to change that. So that's where the topic today will come in, where we need a framework that helps us to understand, qualify, and begin to communicate regularly the value that we're delivering to that business. Now, the final question, and it's the one that is glossed over and ignored the most often, and it's actually the most important. Because even if you nail the top 2, if you don't address this third question, it's going to fail. It's never going to hit the value outcomes that you're looking for. So that question is, how do you intend to initiate and sustain a cultural shift in your organization? We're technologists. We've, over the past decades, grown our careers by adopting constantly new technologies. That's how we grew our careers. I come from a networking background. I'm a CCIE route switch. But for many of those years, I was completely agnostic to the business that I was supporting. We have to change that. The challenge is it's not easy to change culture. You can't launch a program, an explicit program for culture 2.0. That's never going to work. How it can work is if you tuck that cultural transformation behind another different solution, and you lead it and you give the people in your organization a reason, the tools they need to actually initiate and then sustain that cultural shift over time. So we do that. I raise these questions for the obvious purpose of saying that we're going to share a solution to these questions with you today. That solution is the adoption of an end-to-end services model, moving your organization to be an IT as a service organization. So the very first thing we want to do is understand exactly what we mean by an end-to-end services organization, why it is fundamentally different than how we've done services in the past within IT. So one consideration to begin with, if you can, I know there's a lot of standards out there for services, just set those aside. Now, I'm not saying that if a standard is out there and has proven valuable that we're just going to ignore it. We will use anything that adds value and that works. But I just set those previous ideas for how you design and manage services behind for right now. And I want to introduce 3 principles for end-to-end services model. Principle number 1, we need to fundamentally rethink the why and the how of service design. So, first of all, the why. Why do we call out services in the first place? A service is just a logical construct, but it has the value of creating a zone of management for us. It boxes something out and lets us focus on how we're managing that. Now, number 2 comes down to we need to really think about how we're designing those services, and we need to design services that focus on what is being delivered to the customer and what are the circumstances that create value for the delivery of that service, not on how we operate the technical platforms that deliver that service. So as a good analogy for that principle, take a ride-sharing service. So in the States, I'm more familiar with Uber or Lyft. I think Didi here would be a good example. So as a customer, I get value from that ride-sharing service if I get picked up quickly, taken to my destination quickly, and if the costs are in line. And I'm here to tell you that the times that I've been incredibly frustrated or dissatisfied with those services were because of one of those reasons. The fact that if I'm upset that I got dropped off late, the fact that the tire pressure, the oil temperature, or all of those things were within inside an SLA, that doesn't impact the fact that I didn't have a good customer experience with that service. That's the difference between designing services that focus on the customer experience and what makes the service valuable to the customer, as opposed to designing services focused on the platforms we use to deliver. Principle number 2, each and every service that we designate will be associated with an understanding of the value it creates for the business. I'll say it like this, it's very simple. Why would you create and manage and deliver a service if you can't understand the value that it's delivering to your business? So again, the good news is IT organizations deliver an incredible amount of value. We just have to figure out how to qualify that. So we're going to define value as saying that it's a consideration of the total cost to deliver the service at a desired level of performance, weighed against the impact on business outcomes. So right then and there, let's admit that's subjective. Value is subjective. And most important of all, you as the service provider are not the determining party for the value that's being delivered. Your customer is. What we need to do is figure out how we can build a view of the value that fits really close to the customer's understanding of that value. Now, another element of that, each and every service that we design will be assigned a service owner who will be solely accountable for the business value that's delivered from that service and the resulting customer experience. We'll go more into that in just 1 second. Principle number 3, end-to-end services. So every historically, we in IT organizations, we called out services for things that we delivered via a service catalog, an e-store, laptops, desktops, provisioning, password changes, things like that. That doesn't begin to capture the hundreds and thousands of capabilities and products that IT organizations today are delivering. So what we need to do is call out services for everything, and especially a service that delivers those capabilities and products into a line of business that's doing something like selling insurance, trading commodities. So we apply these three principles. Now let's look at the big picture. The big picture is it gives us a parallel view of IT. A parallel view that is linked from where every resource, asset, and dollar of IT is now linked up to a service that in turn is being managed to deliver business value. Now contrast that with what we have available today. If you're a CFO or a COO and you're trying to get your head around, why does IT cost so much? What am I getting for it? What is the business getting for that? Presenting them with our traditional organizational structure view, we've got security, we've got infrastructure, networking, and the budgets assigned to those things, that doesn't help a CFO understand the value they're getting. But this parallel view of IT that we create, that does that. That's an incredibly powerful tool to move to. There's one other point I want to make about this new approach to service design, and that's the point that it gives us an opportunity to legitimately transform the initial customer experience for all services. We do that by leveraging a service as a layer of abstraction between the customer and all of the complexities behind the scenes for how we deliver the service. So traditionally, a business unit, a line of business, is going to have to interface with any number of traditional IT silos. Instead, let's abstract them from that. A lot of times when I'm coaching, I encourage service owners to think of this as a table. Your customer just wants to know that a stable table, is available to get the capabilities and products they need to when they need it. They don't need to worry about the legs of the table. They don't need to worry about or know about the organizational structure, the processes, the different budgeting cycles, things like that. That's for your service owner to manage behind the scenes. So always remember, the services are a terrific opportunity to abstract the customer from the complexities of IT, focus on that business value creation, that customer experience for them. All right. So this is the IT as a service framework. So this is a framework that we built to help us mature end-to-end services models. The goal was always to go back to, we need a way to really qualify and communicate business value and customer experience. So these are the elements of the framework. Now, I will say, for those of you who pick up a copy of the book and want to read it, chapter 2 goes through some of this content. It presents a lot more complex, overly thought out view of this. Just ignore that, use that. If I'm being quite honest, the consulting work required us to travel almost constantly over the past few years. If I'm being very honest, I wrote most of this book while at hotel bars drinking. So just ignore that. Focus on this one. This is the framework and all the most important elements. As you would expect, services are the pinnacle. They're the top. But what I want to do instead is draw your attention to the bottom, to the foundation. Service roles and responsibilities. In other words, people. Okay, the people are the most critical part of this. Out of all of the intellectual property we've built to help deploy these frameworks and get value from them, most of that comes into the coaching we provide to service owners. So again, as a very quick example, thinking through coaching a service owner at a Shell oil company here recently, and we were trying to coach to develop a capabilities roadmap for the service. Now, like most IT technologists, the very first thing she brought back was a end-of-life roadmap for the applications involved in the service. And we said, well, you know, if you're upgrading these applications and you're doing it just for the purpose of maintaining support, handle that behind the scenes. Your customer doesn't need to see that. But is there any type of new capability that your business is going to get from this? And after she thought about it, she said, yeah. Once we do this upgrade, they'll be able to perform wellbore analysis, twice as deep as a lot of our competitors can now. And that's it. That's a business capability. That's a capability roadmap. And over time, we moved this service owner from seeing herself as an application administrator to a student of the business. That's what we coach on time and time again, is you need to become a student of the business that you're delivering to. You need to understand what makes the delivery of these services valuable to that business. And over time, both this IT service owner and the technologist in that line of business, they're the ones who start developing these disruptive capabilities that help you be the disruptor who upsets the marketplace with your innovation. Next element, service performance. So how we do this is we will encourage service owners to collect any and every data analytic point that's relevant to their service. Obviously, that gets crazy. So what we then task the service owners to do is to aggregate all of their metrics into one of these buckets. So one of the first things you'll notice about these buckets, it's well-rounded. This is the full picture, right? In a lot of cases, IT organizations focus on quality and cost. We're so worried about cost. A lot of times your customer is more focused on speed. And what happens a lot of times is no one's looking at risk management. So that's another advantage to this approach. What we're doing is distributing out the responsibility for risk management, for the total cost of ownership, for things like that. Traditional IT silos, you have a single team that's responsible for digital security, and they're trying to figure out how to manage risk across all of the hundreds and thousands of products and technical capabilities being delivered in IT. Here, we're boxing those up in logical groups, assigning them a service owner to manage that. Those service owners are accountable for managing that risk by reaching back into the digital security team. So that same concept is going to be applied for all of these service performance considerations. Next up, cost. Cost is absolutely an element of value. The mistake I see most organizations make is leading with cost. Cost is a result or a byproduct of what you're delivering and the expectations for performance. So get your performance right, then figure out how to optimize your cost. Now, a couple of things to consider here. We need to be able to show the total cost of delivery in an easy to understand model. What we don't need to do is deliver hundreds and hundreds of pages of analytics. Your customers may want to see that at first, but over time, they just want to see the high level. So we use, for this framework, this very simple 3-block model. We allocate the cost into run the business, change the business cost, or to the indirect cost, those costs to host and store the data. So again, another advantage to this is traditional IT organizational structures. You've got a line manager overseeing a silo like infrastructure, and they're trying to manage the budget. Here again, we're distributing out the responsibility for managing cost optimally. Next, and it's frustrating, this is one that I see most organizations want to glaze over. Service reviews. You need to step out and demonstrate to your IT leaders and to your business leaders that you're running this like a business. What's the good of building all of this if you just never check up on it? So the value here is the 3-party conversations. We want to have business leaders and IT leaders in the room at the same time and have the service owner as the bridge between them. The service owner as a student of that business in the room with them, helping to correlate all of the requirements from both sides. Finally, we have a services taxonomy. It's always boggled my mind how many standards are out there for services, and so few of them contain any type of taxonomy. Even for small organizations, when you design services end to end, you're going to have 50, 60 or more services. That can be incredibly complex to manage as a flat listing of services. So what we do is we aggregate. So we aggregate into architecture service groups. There's no reason to have a service architect individually for each one. Let's group them into like services and develop architectural strategy at that point. That top level, strategic service groups. This is how you create strategic levers for the IT leaders to steer the IT organization like an agile, competitive business. Right? So imagine for a second, you've called out services end to end. You've grouped, you've made one group of services that's delivering specifically to your industry lines of business, manufacturing, energy, finance, banking. The CIO can say, invest where you need to, but your top priority for those service lines is customer experience. You need to deliver new capabilities, develop transformative capabilities, and drive customer experience. But then you've got another block of services that are delivering capabilities into common corporate functions, HR, legal, finance. The CIO can say, look, there's nothing special about what we're delivering there. So my goal for this block of services is to drive down your run the business cost by 5%. The taxonomy unlocks that multi-level strategic levers for steering the IT organization. All right. Finally, what good is a framework that's just a framework? It's just academic. It's just theory. The real challenge comes into how you apply that framework and realize the value outcomes. I always get so frustrated when I see all of these standards that are aggressively positioning themselves as we are the answer for how you run IT like a business. We are the solution for digital transformation. And it's a lot of academics, nothing behind the scenes to help you understand exactly how you adopt that framework and achieve the value outcomes. So this is the exact program that we use to help customers move through the services transformation. A couple of things I want to point out there. Number one, at the very bottom, change leadership. Change leadership is probably the most important element of the work. We actively work with the CIO and CTO to develop what's effectively a marketing program. You've got to be able to step out, and I'm often asked during sessions, what is the number one element that breaks a successful services transformation? And I'll tell you right away, it's a lack of strong leadership and vision. So what you need is a strong CIO or CTO to step out and say, this is where we're going, this is why, this is how it's going to work, this is how it will impact you. And then they need to stick to that. They need to reinforce that. So we're basically launching and then sustaining a marketing program. We've got to evangelize the services transformation and the why that we're doing it. Another point I want to call out about this. This program was developed to deliver value early and often. So you don't have to move to the end of the 18-month program before you see any value. That's not it at all. Instead, any one of these blocks is creating value. So there's a block at the top of phase one where we try to figure out the capability requirements for the lines of business. And this is always great if you have a successful enterprise architecture practice that we can pull information from, even just older business process design elements from the different BUs is helpful. But what we find again and again is you will have the exact same technical capability requirement across your enterprise, and yet you'll have different assets used to deliver those. In some cases, there's a good reason for that, but in most cases, there's not. So even in that early phase, we're able to hand off to IT leaders a significant cost savings opportunity to go investigate that duplication and see what makes sense to pull out. Final point I'll make about this, every one of these blocks is real. So we can bust into any one of these blocks and we can boil it down to the deliverables, the activities, the value that the customer is getting from this. Contrast that, I think, a lot of times with consulting firms who they really just want to do strategy. They want to cook up a strategy and hand it off to you. So in closing, I do want to just say very quickly, I don't want to claim that the IT as a service framework or moving to an end-to-end services organization is the only solution. What I am offering is that it is a proven solution. It is a proven solution to help you enable the aggressive digital transformation of your business. It will enable you to run IT like a competitive business, and it is an incredible, rare, and unique opportunity to sustain and initiate a cultural shift in your IT organization. It's proven, and we can get started today. Thank you so much for your time.